Tamra Judge and Teddi Mellencamp got in a feud with Bethenny Frankel. It's one for the ages. The Real Housewives of Orange County alum and the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills alum is going after the Real Housewives of New York alums in a new war of words as fans. No, Bethenny came out with her own podcast that recaps prior seasons of RHOBH. Some fans and her fellow cast members claim she's trying to piggyback onto the show despite leaving seasons. Also, meanwhile, Tamra and Teddi their own podcast, and they're using the platform to fire back. The two came for Bethenny on their 2 T's in a Pod podcast. The duo slammed the RHOBH alums. Recent interview between Jabs and Jabs about her old show on Watch What Happens Live. This didn't sit well with Tamra Judge and Teddi Mellencamp and many brays on the December 7th episode of WWL. Bethenny returned to the clubhouse. She argued with host Andy about her new podcast last month. Bethenny launched her new RHOBH podcast, where she looks back at previous episodes of R&I. Andy thinks Bethenny is hypocritical as she's trashed the show for the last 3 years. The philanthropist denied the claims. Bethenny said the show was toxic, which is why she left. She started the podcast to share more of her reflections. Andy noted that Bethenny called the RHOBH legacy series of boring TikTok videos. Still, she defends her decision to create the podcast since she was still part of that experience in my life. Fellow guest Jeff Lewis asked Bethenny if the RHOBH podcast was different from other Real Housewives recap podcasts. Bethenny was offended by his phrase. She claimed it was her personal choice to leave Vern the skinny girl. Founder struck a chord with him when she mentioned that RHOBH canceled his series. Flipping out, there was tension in the air between the trio. Tamra Judge shared her thoughts on what Bethenny said. In that interview, she also slammed Jeff Lewis. While she was at it, no one was safe in their new interview. The thing I really didn't care for is Jeff said, so tell me what's different about your podcast than any other recap Housewives. And she goes, well, I wasn't fired. Tamra Judge said on December's episode of 2 T's in a Pod. What the *** code does that have to do with anything? You're an ex-house wife, and it doesn't matter if you got fired or you quit. What does that have to do with that being different with your podcast? Tamra and Teddi continued to call out Bethenny's jabs. Teddi wanted to know why Bethenny was so defensive about her podcast. And my original cast member hasn't responded to their claims. It's unlikely that they will invite her to re-podcast. What are your thoughts on what Tamra Judge and Teddi said about Bethenny? Do you agree with them, or do you think Bethenny has every right to start her own podcast about the show? Sound off below in the comment section.